More and more people are choosing the Niagara region over cities like Toronto or even Hamilton. Hey everyone, I'm Kevin Marley. I'm a realtor here in the Niagara region. I'm with Davenport Realty, and I'm actually one of those people who chose the Niagara region. I live in the city of St. Catharines. Now we are seeing, like I said, more people choosing this area, and the reasons are plentiful. You got the waterfront access both through the canals as well as the lake right there in your own backyard. And speaking of backyards, many people during this pandemic are looking for more space. Yes, they're looking for inside space, but they're also looking for outdoor space as things close down and reopen and repeat. And Niagara has land aplenty. The lot sizes are bigger than most of the cities, as well as the access to the farmland, as well as the wineries. In fact, people would have often come here on their days off as a weekend retreat or on a vacation to the bed and breakfast up on Niagara on the Lake, or even the glamorous hotels at Niagara Falls itself, the landmark that gives this area its name. Primarily, these people are coming from the cities such as Toronto. Most of them are coming from Toronto. In the past, they've chosen closer areas such as Burlington or even Hamilton, but those areas have gone up in price to the point that buyers are simply being priced out of the market there, and they are turning their attention elsewhere. And Niagara is just down the road from Hamilton, and this seems to be the area that people have chosen as their next stop. Now, because they're coming from a big city, there is going to be a change to their lifestyle, a big tempo change, a big change of pace. And that is what I hope to do in a couple of these videos, is talk about the changes I saw moving from the city of Hamilton originally to St. Catharines, and how that affected me and what I wish I knew in advance. Now, before I get into the specifics about how I ended up here in St. Catharines, I will say that I was already somewhat familiar with St. Catharines itself. My grandparents had lived here all my life, and I had visited them quite frequently, multiple times every year. So I knew a little bit about the city, but there are still some unique surprises awaiting for me when I moved here full time. After I graduated university at McMaster in Hamilton, I went ahead and got my realtor license and was doing real estate in Hamilton full time. My fiance got a job out here in St. Catharines and was commuting back and forth from St. Catharines to Hamilton every day. Now, if you've sat in traffic between Hamilton and Toronto or Hamilton and St. Catharines, you understand her pain. It did not take us long to make up our minds. Once she saw the ease and convenience for her to go back and forth to work, and for me, I love this city, so I was happy to do business here in St. Catharines. It was a match made in heaven. There were still some unique challenges that would be presented to us along the way. After all, we were coming from downtown Hamilton and moving to a much quieter city, and a quieter part of that city, if I'm being quite honest. Now, before we chose St. Catharines full time, we did scout out the surrounding areas. You've got Beamsville, Thorold, Niagara on the Lake, Niagara Falls, the city, all the way down in Welland, and even if you move back towards Hamilton, in Grimsby and even Stony Creek on the far east end of Hamilton. But we ultimately settled for St. Catharines. Now, moving is a physical task. It is brutal on your body, and unfortunately, due to our schedules and whatnot, I had to do most of the moving myself while my fiance was going to work, because she was commuting back and forth from Hamilton still at this time. And so it was absolutely brutal. However, what people don't talk about enough is the emotional or the mental fatigue that can come with it. After all, you are packing up your entire life. People who you used to be able to walk out the front door of your home and chat with are now going to be a phone call away. And this is something that people don't realize until they already get to their new place, and all of a sudden their community is gone. Their connections to the people around them are much more restricted and much more resigned into the digital and virtual space. And so these are all challenges that you need to be ready for when you are making a move, especially when you are coming from a city where you were probably living in a high rise where you were living alongside 100 to 200 to close to 1,000 people, and now you're going to be living in a neighborhood with maybe 50. So these are big changes that come with the new lifestyle that you're going to be adopting. And this is why real estate is often very emotional, because it isn't just about the numbers on the contract. It's also about how you feel about uprooting yourself from potentially your friends, family, your close-knit community, and completely being isolated from them, potentially only seeing them online. And that is a huge step. And that is why I wanted to start this channel, to talk about my experience from both just a human being, but also as a realtor who knew this going into this move, what to expect. And hopefully I can impart some of my own experiences onto you, and you can learn from them and be ready for them and anticipate them in advance. And so you aren't caught off guard when this happens to you. And so if you want, please subscribe, follow along with this channel, make sure you hit that notification bell as more videos come out, and hopefully you'll be able to avoid some of the missteps I took on my journey. All right, so without further ado, let's get into it. My top 5 reasons for moving to St. Catharines, Ontario. Number 1 reason is location. Take a look at this map here. I'm going to pull it up in a second. And you can see that St. Catharines is central in this region. You're about 20 minutes from Niagara Falls. You're at most 40 minutes from Hamilton in bad traffic. And you have easy access to all the towns in between, which is the prime destination for people coming out this way on those weekend trips that we spoke about. You can easily jut up to Niagara on the Lake. You can pop down south to Thorold or continue down to Welland very easily. It has multiple access points to the highways as well as the service roads, depending on the traffic situation. And then you are right beside wine country, the farmland that people love to go take a look at and drive through. So with location being the prime factor, it's not just that I fell in love with the city of St. Catharines and was intimately familiar with this part of the Niagara region. It was that I loved all aspects of it. I love going to Niagara on the Lake, especially during Christmas time, to take a look at the lights. I love going down to Fort Erie to take a look at the old battlements, especially during the fall and Halloween time. Niagara Falls is beautiful all year round, and wine country in the summer, nothing beats it. And St. Catharines is in close proximity to all of it. Reason number 2 that I chose St. Catharines is the homes. Now, if you've ever driven through the city of St. Catharines, you will know what I mean. And this is why this city is often picked for filmmakers, because they can make that downtown core look like just about anything that they want. This is one of the best areas for filmmakers because of that iconic look that the downtown has. And you can find all types of homes here, which is right up my alley as a realtor. I love looking at different style homes. You have the post-World War II 2.5-story detached that you often see in the older parts of Hamilton and Toronto. You have these nice super wide bungalows on a double wide lot from the 1950s. You have these mansions that are even older than that from the 1920s that are taking up corners of the older parts of the city. It's got everything, not to mention the waterfront, the farmland, and the wine country views that you can get from just about anywhere in the city. And so as a realtor, it can't get any better than this. But also just from an architectural point of view, I love looking at these homes, and getting to drive past them every day is just so refreshing. Reason number 3 is the water access. I love water. I love the beach. If you know anything about me, that is my happiest place. And St. Catharines has an abundance of it. You have the canal, which is an excellent walk path as well as a bike path that lets you see the water all the time. You have the beachfront access if you live on the north end of St. Catharines. You got Port Dover on the northwest corner of St. Catharines, and it's just magical. And so water access was very important to me. I used to go fishing a lot with my grandfather, who, as I mentioned previously, has lived here all of my life. And so when I moved up here, this was one of the reasons that I chose St. Catharines over some of the areas to the southwest of St. Catharines, which are beautiful and much closer to wine country, but didn't have that waterfront access and view that I was looking for. All right, reason number 4 I chose St. Catharines was the city layout. Now, this one I didn't realize was as important to me as it turned out to be. I grew up in Hamilton, which is a very rigid grid style of city planning, which means you have a handful of through roads, which are typically one way, especially in Hamilton. And this means that if those roads are gridlocked, there is no way around. Now, St. Catharines is completely different because St. Catharines' history is very different. St. Catharines formed when multiple towns expanded into each other and formed a larger town or city of St. Catharines. And you can still see remnants of this today. Each neighborhood has its own little shopping plaza, complete with grocery store and drugstore. And because of that, each little neighborhood is able to function independently, which means you don't really have to travel very far to get your basic needs. But if you are going to be traveling far across the city, there are endless ways to do it. Now, not every road goes in the exact direction you want to go. Some do form on an angle because they were naturally developed. However, there is no one way that when it's gridlocked, you can't get through. There's always another way. And in fact, the roads that are on the edges of the city actually develop a circle. So you can literally drive around the city on a couple of these roads. And I didn't realize how much I needed this. If you have spent any time in gridlock in rush hour, you know what I mean. Just being able to get to where you need to go when there's gridlock is just so anxiety easing for me anyway. And reason number 5 is community. Now you might be thinking, Kevin, that's kind of weird. You said you moved from Hamilton, where all your family and friends are, to a city that you only knew your grandparents in. And you would be correct. However, like I said in my previous point, because each neighborhood kind of functions independently from the city as a whole, each little neighborhood is almost like a small town. And so you do end up getting that small town vibe, even though you are in what is a reasonably large town or small city. But on top of that, there are just certain things that you get here that I didn't seem to be able to find in Hamilton, and one of them is the local hockey community. Now, Hamilton does have a local junior team, and there are a number of people who do play hockey on the weekends. However, I find here it's much easier, for me anyway, to be able to find a flexible time to play hockey with a group of guys, rather than in Hamilton where it was very strict and you were only able to get ice time at very specific times of the evening. And as a realtor, those are my busiest moments some days. So I needed to have that flexibility to play during the day. And that's what I found here in St. Catharines. Now, this is not why I moved to St. Catharines, but once I got here, I realized that this was a piece of the puzzle that was missing from my life while I was living in Hamilton. And I was living in a pretty young community close to McMaster University. And so I was shocked when I got here in a much older part of the city that there was still that sort of vibrant coming together fellowship, if you will, that allowed me to find people to play hockey with, or I'm going to be taking up curling and even badminton in the near future. All right, last thing I want to mention before I wrap this up is something that I should have noticed earlier in my life. After all, I was coming up here on a pretty regular basis, at least twice a year, if not more, and that is the weather. The weather pattern in the Niagara region is pretty strange, especially for some of the major areas such as Niagara Falls, Niagara on the Lake, and where I live in the city of St. Catharines. And that's because of the proximity to water. Now, if you are in, say, the southwestern part of Hamilton or the northwestern part or northeastern part, for that matter, of Toronto, you probably don't notice this, but the people near the water in those cities certainly do. And that is, you do get a slight delay in terms of the change of seasons. So I've noticed that in the summertime, it's still quite cool here, while it is much hotter in Hamilton. Especially if I'm going out there to do business, I will dress inappropriately because I am dressed for the cold that is just out my front door, and I end up going into what is summer weather in Hamilton, which I'm much too hot in. Or in the wintertime, I will be dressing as if it's still fall, and I'll roll into Burlington and I'll see snow on the ground. So that is one thing that I didn't pick up on until I finally moved here, and it's something that you need to get used to pretty quickly. And it's just very interesting. And also, you're going to have to plan for trips when you move or when you travel back to Hamilton or Toronto, that the weather there is not going to be the same as where you live. And there you have it. That is why I chose St. Catharines. Those are my top 5 reasons. And in hindsight, I wish I had known some of this beforehand. And I wish I was more prepared for some of these events and just the overall change in my daily life that would develop because of my new location. And so that's why I'm ultimately going to be putting out these videos. And so if you or anyone, or you know anyone that is thinking about making a move, especially out to the Niagara region, please subscribe and hit that bell notification and give it a thumbs up, because that tells me that I should keep making these videos because people are getting some value from them. I'm more than happy to be a resource for anyone thinking about making this transition. I'm happy to walk you through the process. Let's stay connected. I will see you on the next one.